This special program is sponsored by Willamette University.
This election marks the beginning of a new chapter in Portland's story. City government is changing dramatically after 111 years. Portlanders say the only way forward is to turn the page on the city's issues.
Your average citizen that was born and raised here can hardly afford to live here.
In 2025, a new mayor and a new role taking the reins of a city in crisis.
What's the first step to deal with the homelessness? How are we navigating the fentanyl crisis?
19 candidates are running. 5 will take the stage tonight to discuss the problems that matter most to you. The race for Portland mayor is on. Katu and Willamette University's debate starts right now.
From Katu and Willamette University, this is Your Voice, Your Vote. The race for Portland mayor. Debate 2024.
And thank you for joining us for this special edition of K2 News, everybody. I'm Steve Dunn. Tonight, K2 is on your side hosting a debate between some of the candidates for Portland's mayor. They're here tonight. I'll introduce them in just a minute. But first of all, we're at Willamette University's Pacific Northwest College of Art, this beautiful building here, and they are the sponsor, Willamette University is, of tonight's debate. We have a message from them first.
I'm Steve Thorsett, president of Willamette University. We are proud to support K2's Your Voice, Your Vote election coverage. For nearly 2 centuries, Willamette's mission has been to educate leaders for civic society. We believe a healthy democracy depends on thoughtful and ethical leaders in government, and especially on an informed electorate. We're grateful for the discussions and debates K2 brings to our community. Thanks for watching.
The rules for the debate will be as follows tonight. There will be no opening statements. The candidates will each have a minute to answer each question. The candidate who answers a question first will have a chance to give a 30-second follow-up statement after the other 4 candidates have responded. I can decide if a follow-up question or rebuttal is needed from a particular candidate. If that happens, the candidate will be given 30 seconds to deliver the follow-up statement or rebuttal. Each candidate will have a minute at the end for a closing remark. Joining us tonight for this debate, we have Rene Gonzalez, has served a year on City Council, is the Public Safety Commissioner. He's here tonight. We have Keith Wilson, CEO of a local trucking company and founder of a nonprofit called Shelter Portland. Liv Østhus is an activist, writer, musician, and artist living and working in Portland. Carmen Rubio has served on City Council since 2020, heads the Housing Bureau Developmental Services Planning and Sustainability, and Prosper Portland, the city's economic development agency. And Mingus Maps down there, the City Commissioner for Transportation, Water, and Environmental Services. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate you being here tonight. The candidates picked a number to see who answers the first question. That person is Carmen Rubio. You are the lucky winner tonight.
Lucky one.
Carmen, so here we go. This is the first question. After more than 100 years, Portland city government is undergoing a major change. The next mayor will not be a member of the city council. It will be up to the newly elected council to vote on policy. As mayor, you can propose it, but only vote in the event of a tie. You will hire the city administrator, city attorney, and chief of police, but the council must approve your choices. The new council will be more focused on the broader direction of the city. Some people say that the mayor is more of a figurehead now. What is your vision of the mayor's job? And Carmen, you are first and you have 1 minute.
Great, thank you. So for me, when I envision this new role of the mayor is not only the chief cheerleader and communicator on behalf of the city, it also speaks on behalf of the city with one voice as one city. And that's actually a new feature because we used to have bureaus under so many different commissioners. Now we will have a clear message. We will have clear mission, clear outcomes across the whole enterprise. The other role that the mayor has as a partner to the city council is to make sure that you are actually developing a partnership, that you are co-creating the vision for the city and implementing the vision of the legislative branch together with the community. So those specific roles and having the temperament and the skills and knowing how to build coalition and work together and collaborate are going to be essential skills.
Mingus Maps, you are next. Same question. Your vision of the mayor's job now.
Well, I think every Portlander should realize that we are truly moving into a new moment in Portland's history. I think it's a brighter moment. One of the reasons why I'm running for mayor, not council, is that I am excited about the role that the mayor will play in the future of Portland. The mayor is going to be the only elected official in City Hall with a citywide constituency, so the mayor has to set a broad direction for the city, but at the same time, the mayor is responsible for implementing policies set by City Council. That's one of the reasons why I think I am going to be one of the best mayors that Portland has ever seen. On council, I've been your infrastructure guy, which means I've been implementing policies and making things happen in the real world. And when I'm your mayor, that is going to be my emphasis also.
We'll come back around to the front here. Rene Gonzalez, your turn.
Well, your next mayor is going to lead the administrative and executive function for the city of Portland. That involves orienting the entire bureaucracy towards everyday citizens, taxpayers in the city of Portland. You're also a champion for the city across the country, across the globe. You're responsible for telling the city's story, promoting industry, promoting visitors to the city, and putting our best foot forward across all of those platforms. Finally, you set the vision for the core administrative function in the city of Portland. I will very much be focused on restoring Portland's livability, focused on a place where families can thrive, where elders can age in place, where businesses can grow. And it's essential that your next mayor be clear in articulating where it wants your government to focus. Thank you.
Keith Wilson, you are up.
Thank you, Steve. This is a complete change and departure from what we're at. Right now, we're being managed by a committee. This new mayor is going to be more like the CEO of the city. So it's a complete departure. It's a slimmer role because there's no legislative duties. But what's really exciting is because this is going to really feature and focus on executive leadership. So this mayor is going to be in charge of the entire enterprise in an individual way, setting the vision for the city, being able to hire and fire the city administrative officer, if you will, the chief operating officer. This person is going to be responsible for delivering the core services of the city and be uniquely responsible for those core services. No more placing blame on anybody else. Essentially, the buck stops here, which is a very important process. They're going to be in charge of the budget and also the assignments through the city as a whole. What's really important to know is we need an executive with experience, with a record of success. I've built the safest, most innovative, and environmentally progressive transportation company in America. It's that leadership that I'll bring to the city to allow us to really move our city forward.
And Liv, you have 1 minute.
Thank you so much, Steve. Yeah, this is a really exciting time. Our new mayor will set the tone for Portland going forward, and will set a new template for mayors going forward. And I guess I disagree with Keith a little bit. I don't think we need a CEO. I think the mayor hires our new chief administrator and hires our city attorney, and this frees the mayor up to really be the new face of Portland, to be a visionary mayor is what I'm looking for, someone who listens to every Portlander. We finally have Portlanders represented from East Portland and from North Portland. Listen to them, connect with them, and ultimately inspire them. Reflect the very, very best of Portland and Portlanders to us, to our nation, to our world. That's why I jumped into the race, because I am particularly well suited to this. I also want to mention what Carmen said about temperament is really important. We're going to need to collaborate with the new council members. It's a 12-person council. Relationships are going to be really important. Thank you.
Carmen, because you answered the question first, you have an opportunity for a follow-up if you'd like to take it for 30 seconds.
I would, thank you. So I would just like to echo again what my colleague had said about this is creating the blueprints for the next generation in our city. We're at a really pivotal moment where we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to shape what that culture will be moving forward. And the skills that you need in this next set of years is going to be different than subsequent mayors coming down the road. We're creating that blueprint, and so we need to make sure that it has all the essential skills and capabilities that we want to see in our culture.
Next question, we're going to talk about trust. Very important as the mayor of this city when it comes to trust. I've got individual questions for each of you, and you'll have a minute. And Mingus, I'm going to begin with you. Your campaign for mayor has been a quiet one for the most part. Willamette Week reported last month that your mayoral campaign has struggled financially. How do voters know you're really in this to win this?
Well, I've been running for mayor longer than any of my other colleagues. One of the reasons why I jumped into this race early is I also have the heaviest workload on city council. Half the city's budget and 95% of the city's assets run through my portfolio. And I'll tell you, about late last year, I had to put my campaign on hold in order to lead yet another campaign. That was the Fixing Our Streets campaign. That's the mechanism that we use to fund PBOT and our other transportation needs. That was not good for my campaign, my mayoral campaign, but it sure was good for Portland, and it tells you a little bit about the kind of mayor I will be. Given the choice of focusing in on the needs of the city versus my own personal or professional needs, I will always choose the city first.
Rene, you are next. You received some backlash for using city funds to edit your Wikipedia page. What do you say to voters concerned about how the public funds were spent there?
Yeah, well, in investigating that, reviewing that, we found there were over 1,000 instances of congressional leadership addressing communication through Wikipedia. In fact, President Biden, when he was a senator, his office was involved in updating a Wikipedia page on behalf of his office. There's a lot of misinformation out there online. It's essential that your next mayor, that your leadership addresses those things online directly. Also, you've got to put it in context. All offices have communication budgets. You have to use it strategically. You have to use it thoughtfully. And we invested to enhance the skills of one of our team members. Thank you.
Keith, you're up next. You've touted your plan for homelessness. How can voters be assured that you can tackle more than that single issue?
That's right. You know, that's the most critical issue that's facing us in Portland. And we have to go through that very, very difficult task to get to the more, to get to the blocking and tackling, the transportation issues, the funding issues, the behavioral health issues. I've built a record of success. And again, when you look at my professional experience, I mentioned at the top of the show, my professional experience. But as far as a community leader, I'm vice chair of Ward is Bond. So I've mentored Portland's future leaders. As a political change maker, I've led bipartisan coalitions for clean air and better transportation. I passed a bill in the Oregon legislature last year with bipartisan support. Every Republican and every Democrat voted for it. So it's not just a singular focus. I have a well-rounded amount of experience and success in my career. But I do know, and I want to go back to that top, but to put the city back on a course correction, we can't let people live and die on the street. So I have to address that first.
Liv, you are next. What do you say to the voters out there who are concerned about your occupation as a stripper and whether you have the work experience to lead a city of this size?
Well, of course, I'm not just a stripper. I'm also a writer, a published author, a musician. I've been in many films. I bartend. I would say to the Portland voters that I jumped into this race because I have the skills that I learned at Mary's to really connect to everybody across the aisle, to listen to everybody, and to inspire them as they're walking out the door. At Mary's Club, we see people from every walk of life, and it's our honor to connect and communicate with them. I want new types of leaders going forward. I expect new types of leaders going forward, and this is the perfect time, this new system of government with a weak mayor, to allow for these more visionary, less typical-looking leaders to lead. I'm absolutely a leader in my community, and I think, you know, if people dug a little deeper, watch my documentary, watch my TED Talk, read my book, you'll see some of the vastness that I and any stripper encompass. Thank you.
Carmen, you're next. It's been reported over the years you've accumulated more than 100 parking and traffic tickets and had your license suspended 6 times. How can viewers trust that you will follow the law as mayor?
Well, no one is more sorry or embarrassed than I am about those things. And I have paid off all the fines and fees years ago. And I really hope that voters give me a chance to demonstrate and answer all of the questions and concerns they have about our city in homelessness, in housing, in public safety. And I also hope that voters will take a look at my track record over the last several years at the city of Portland, and they'll see that over that time, I have absolutely been one of the most highest producing commissioners of meaningful legislation. So I'm hoping that voters will give me a chance.
We're going to move on to the next question. Now, I'm sure you all noticed the tents on the sidewalks right across the street from this building where we're holding this debate tonight. Homelessness, always the #1 issue. When we go out, doesn't matter what district, we talk to folks. That's the #1 issue they want to discuss. What can you really do as mayor to get these folks off the street and into shelter? Rene, let's begin with you.
Well, one, I've led on ending the enablement culture in the city of Portland. That means cessation of handing out tents and tarps that creates an environment that draws more into the city of Portland. At the same time, I fully support, and as part of the Gonzalez plan on shelter, fully support task sites and safe rest villages. Far superior to the congregate shelter that Mr. Wilson advocates for, because it provides on-site behavioral health, addiction, and mental illness, that it has a much superior track record in getting people placed in long-term housing. We get much higher acceptance rates with task sites and safe rest villages. For congregate shelter, which Mr. Wilson advocates for, we see 70% turn it down. That's unacceptable. With task site safe rest villages, much better success in getting people to enroll. And we're getting better outcomes. We're getting them into housing in such a way that doesn't negatively impact the neighborhood that we're building those shelters in. That's essential when comparing it to volunteers working in a congregate shelter without professional training on security, without professional training on behavioral health. You simply get better outcomes than under the Wilson plan.
Keith Wilson, you are up next.
So I think the status quo of letting people live on the street and suffer and die is absolutely unacceptable. Steve, you said that there are tents 50 yards from where we're at right now on the gateway on Broadway to our downtown. We have 10 tents with people suffering right this minute as we walk in. We've normalized that. We've got a city that is not taking action, just inaction. And then we have individuals who say, we're going to apply tough love. But tough love without love is just cruelty. I believe we can find a bed for every person in Portland tonight that's not near a school, that's not in a business's doorway, that's not in a tent or an RV. And then and when we do that, we can enforce our community safety laws of no camping or RVs. But if we address the humanitarian crisis first, and we don't talk about the way, we don't just say it's congregate shelter or task sites or SRVs, we use everything at our disposal because this is a humanitarian crisis. When we end that, then we address the behavioral health issues and the addiction issues and the businesses and our suffering economy.
Liv, you are next.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an absolute imperative for all of us as a society to take care of our most vulnerable. We're not taking care of them now, it's clear, and I think each of us recognizes that as our primary concern, but we each have different methods of addressing that. They need more than just beds. They need adequate shelters. There's a lot of addiction, a lot of mental health issues that are not being served by our services here in Portland or in the county or in the state. So I advocate strongly for a top-down coordination of services from the state down, because there is a family in Roseburg who's homeless. There's a family in Seaside who's homeless, and this population does move around. And yes, there's dreadful addiction issues, but it is incumbent upon us to help the least of us so that we can be strong as a society again. Make sure that the staffing is robust. That's been lacking. And make sure that services are everywhere. The cost of living is the #1 indicator of houselessness. So make sure housing is abundant. Thank you.
Carmen, Rubio, you are next.
Yeah, thank you. So one of the first things that I did when I became a commissioner was to immediately pass some policy that enabled the city to build out more shelters with services all the way through more housing. Following that, I led a delegation to Los Angeles to explore other models to see what actually worked. And by far, the model that we saw that had better outcomes was shelters with on-site services paired with them. So since that time, we now have the temporary alternative shelter sites and safe rest villages here with services, and we need to continue to build out that continuum and make sure that those sites have the 3 Ps: privacy, place for possessions, and also pets. Those are going to be things that people most worry about when they are worried about going into shelter. So as much as we can have places with dignity, that's part of the answer. And then we also need to make sure that we have mental health and addiction services available and on-site and fully capacitated with no waiting, so that folks can immediately get their services. And then finally, housing.
Mingus Maps, getting the folks off the street and into shelter. What is your plan?
I got a 3-step plan. Number one, since I've been on council, we've stood up our Safe Rest Village system that now contains more than 500 beds. I will continue to support that. That allows us to move people from the sidewalks into tiny houses and then eventually into permanent housing. The second step there is I want to work with the county to make sure that our clients in our Safe Rest Villages have access to rental vouchers so they can move through. Frankly, if that step doesn't happen, the whole system collapses. The third step, which I think is incredibly important, is housing production. We all know that right now housing production has basically come to a grinding halt in the city. I think that's a failure. We don't see that in other parts of the country. I believe that we can trigger new housing, especially affordable housing, by cleaning up our deeply flawed permitting system.
Rene, you got 30 seconds available too, if you'd like it.
Yeah, I guess just 2 further amplifications. One, the Wilson plan has failed to consistently offer night shelter. He tells this nonprofit, but it has not consistently offered night shelter. When you operate it at scale in a city, you have to offer it 365 days a year. That's why you can't rely on volunteers. That's why you can't rely on just donated space. It's an utter failure so far, and he's touting it as a solution to an area. He's doubling down on the failed approach of Ted Wheeler 8 years ago, making a big promise he cannot deliver on. Further, you cannot pit people with behavioral health issues and addiction into shelter without treatment. You cannot put the abused from spousal abuse in the same place that their abusers are. And that's what happens with unregulated congregate shelters.
We got to take a break. Everybody take a deep breath and a break. We'll continue our discussion here. Mayoral debate. Lots more to talk about. Keep it right here. Back after this.
From Katu and Willamette University, this is Your Voice, Your Vote, the race for Portland Mayor, Debate 2024.
And welcome back to the special edition of K2 News, everybody. Before we get back to the debate, I want to take a moment once again, thank our sponsor for this program, Willamette University. Absolutely appreciate their support, so thank you very much for that. Let's move on now. And last night on K2 News, we reported that 3 city commissioners, 2 of them here, Mingus Maps and Rene Gonzalez, support pulling out of a partnership with the county to combat homelessness. I'd like to ask where you all stand on the city leaving the joint office of homeless services, and what's the plan moving forward if the city withdraws its support from that office? And Keith, we'll begin with you on this.
I was surprised by that, and I just frankly thought, are you kidding me? 2 months before our severe winter shelter season, with the winter coming forward, we're having this conversation right now where we're putting politics over people. We have a brand new negotiation that's going on with the supportive housing services tax, a $437 million tax, and the city is saying that we're not going to have a seat at the table. We're essentially moving away from that, and if you don't have a seat at the table, that means you're on the menu. And we're losing the ability to determine the course that city's going to go to care for our people. And then, third and final, 60 days before a new council and new mayor is seated, it's irresponsible. The city is going to vote on November 5th for the future of Portland. The city councilors we have right now are being irresponsible and taking matters into their own hands without a plan for tomorrow. It's not good government. It loses trust. It's why we're frustrated. It's why we're changing the form of government.
Liv Østhus, you are next. We're talking about the joint office. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd have to echo Keith's opinion. It's completely irresponsible, and I do believe it's a political stunt. This will have real effects on people's jobs, people who rely on their, what is their job going to be come January? And there's a new council coming on January 1st, so that's less than 90 days away. To pull this move right now seems, again, like a political stunt. And ultimately, it's going to have real negative effects on our people living on the streets. We have to think about how our actions affect them. It's life or death for many of them when these kind of political stunts and maneuvering happen. City Manager Michael Jordan, I assume he knows what he's doing. He said this is a terrible idea. Ted Wheeler, I assume he knows what he's doing. He also said this is a terrible idea. Huge props to Carmen Rubio, who stood up in the face of this and said that this is ridiculous. I applaud her for that.
You mentioned Carmen Rubio, and you happen to be next.
Yes.
Go ahead, Carmen.
I too will echo what I've just heard. I think it's incredibly irresponsible. I think it's cruel right before the winter months come. And I also believe that there was a lot of work, a lot of hours, taxpayer funded hours by our professional city staff and county staff that went into creating a plan that we're only 3 months in. So we haven't even seen or realized the full totality of that plan. We're on our way closer alignment. This is the absolute worst time to do this. I am, quite frankly, very disappointed and baffled about how this could take precedence over people's lives.
Mingus Maps.
Well, frankly, I think sticking with the status quo, despite overwhelming evidence that our current systems are failing, is the irresponsible thing to do. Yesterday, Council had a long-established check-in on how things were going at the Joint Office, and what we heard is that we were failing at our basic metrics. Our current contract calls for a clear delineation of the roles between the city and the county in the homeless space. No work has been done on that. One of the other things that's clearly in our contract is that the county is supposed to provide a plan for vouchers for safe rest villages. We need those vouchers in order to move people through the system. That hasn't happened either. And I'll tell you, one of the other things which is currently missing from the Joint Office contract is the metric which specifically looks at the number of tents on the street. The city has real-time information about that. Our goal should be to, number one, track that metric and then work systematically to reduce the number of tents on our streets every day. That's what I believe.
Rene, you are next.
First of all, I would like to thank Commissioner Maps. He has really guided a lot of the thinking about the relationships and the multitude of different ways you can do intergovernmental agreements between the city and county, and I've appreciated his dialogue over the last year and a half. Yesterday took decisive leadership from a majority of council, Commissioner Maps, myself, and Commissioner Ryan. The status quo is failing, and on some really fundamental pieces, we cannot continue to outsource to the county. Specifically, under the existing IGA, we were to hand off task sites and safe rest villages on July 1, 2025. I think that's a terrible mistake. We've done it well. We're getting the push through we need. We have responsibility for the right-of-ways in surrounding areas. I think it's essential that the city stay intimate with that. So yesterday involved decisive action. Also, a number of folks need to do their homework on emergency management shelters. They're not operated under the Joint Office on Homelessness. They're done through emergency management out Multnomah County, City of Portland, have nothing to do with what transpired yesterday.
Keith, you have a follow-up if you'd like it.
Thank you. You know, Steve, I appreciate the comments that were made. And I've heard that we're going to pull out because the status quo is not tenable. And I agree with that. I get that. But good management and good governance says, where are we going to go? And where's that anchor point? And then you take the first step when at least you know where you're heading along the journey. But to just say, I'm going to take my ball and go home without a verifiable plan, it's irresponsible. And again, I'll tell you, with only a month before the winter season comes in, what's next? We need to make sure we have a clear goal on what's the next step.
Liv, you'll answer this next question first here. The Portland City Council approved a new camping ordinance in May of this year. Prohibits people from camping in tents on public property. Also allows the city to fine or jail people who refuse shelter that's offered to them. In your opinion, is the camping ban working? And you have a minute.
Is it working? No, by all accounts, it's not working. I thought it was a bad idea in its inception. We don't have jail space for these people, first of all, so even the model as proposed was never going to work. But also, I think it's just, you can't destabilize a vulnerable population further and call that success. That doesn't move the needle in any way towards what we're hoping for as a city. We have to support these people, find adequate, appropriate spaces for them to camp until we have appropriate shelter that we can house them in. And yeah, we can't. Jail is not a place for people caught in a web of poverty, caught in a web of addiction. And I've heard failure stories from police officers, from criminal defense attorneys, from business owners. It's not working, and I thought it was a bad idea in its inception.
Carmen Rubio, is the camping ban working in your opinion?
So the first, and I'll echo some of the things that Liv has said. We're not going to be able to arrest our way out of homelessness. We need a true system that actually moves people from the streets into stability and ultimately into housing permanently. But for this particular issue, this is why I did not support the first camping ban. There were a lot of open questions for me. We did not have, I could not have my questions answers about training, about engagement, about specialists being a part of developing that plan. And I was really concerned about its legality. And in fact, it was struck down, or there were questions about it, and that it didn't stand up to legal muster. So I suggested repealing and replacing it with something that was more balanced, engaging with stakeholders and experts, so that we could actually have something that more met the intent and the spirit. And so what we have now is much more balanced, and we have yet what remains to be seen. We still have some work to do in terms of how it's implemented across all jurisdictions.
Mingus Maps, your turn.
Well, the camping ban was never intended to be the single bullet that ends homelessness here in Portland. However, it is an important tool in our toolbox. I will tell you there are places which are inappropriate for you to pitch a tent, for example, in front of schools, in front of churches, in front of hospitals. And in my job, I hear from schools, churches, and hospitals every day about campers in front of their front doors. We have to have a tool in order to address issues like that. Unlike Commissioner Rubio, I supported it. I talked to folks out on the streets and our law enforcement officers and folks in the household services community, and they all tell me this is an important tool in order to move our city forward.
Rene Gonzalez, back to you.
The city of Portland needs to say on high and every single day, this is not a place for camping, it's not a place for outdoor drug use. We need to be crystal clear on that, in code, in actions, in messaging out of the city of Portland. And at the same time, commit to building shelter that provides folks a safe place to sleep every night. So we have to do both of those. With respect to the ordinance on the books, I think it's overcomplicated. I voted against the version that was approved this spring. It's not consistent with our neighbors. The city of Gresham says very consistently, no camping here. Whether we require jail time or fine, I'm not sure anyone really knows what's the last step that motivates someone to accept shelter, right? So I don't know if anyone knows precisely whether jail time is required. I'm open to it, but I was also open to an alternative that did not involve jail time, as long as the rules are crystal clear. And what we have on the books is too complicated, is too difficult to operationalize, and makes it hard to say what are the expectations in the city of Portland.
Keith.
The camping ban is not working. It's an absolute failure. We look outside just from where we're at right now, and we see the suffering on our street. And there's so much inaction in our city. We've normalized this humanitarian crisis. And then we're trying to arrest our way out of this, as Carmen mentioned. It's not working. I refuse to believe that we can't offer a bed to every Portlander every night. That doesn't include living in a tent. Cities around the nation, in most cities around the nation, this is not normal. And as mayor, it's not going to be normal in Portland anymore. We have a humanitarian crisis. We need to act like it. I've been operating shelters. I know how to open shelters. I've slept in shelters. I have a plan to do it. And I want to be able to deliver this solution citywide next year with everybody working together, so we don't have to try and use our police force when they can't even show up for a priority 1 call when you're in your greatest time of need, because we're focused on arresting the homeless more than we're addressing public safety writ large in our community.
Liv, you have a follow-up opportunity of 30 seconds if you want to take it.
Thank you. Yeah, so these tents outside, those are actually people's homes. And a tent is shelter. These people live in tents because we don't have adequate no-income, low-income shelter. Our supply is miserable. Meanwhile, there's all these vacant office buildings down here with people sleeping in the doorways. Like, we've got to be able, as a city, to connect the two with this fast pass housing permitting stuff that Carmen has put through, pardon me, but we've got to, as a city, make these habitable, these structures. Tents are shelter. That's a person's home. Let's honor it, and yes, find a better place for them, but honor that. Thank you.
Let's move on to the next question. State lawmakers recriminalized small amounts of hard drugs on September 1st, but clearly more needs to be done in this city. What can you do as mayor to significantly impact Portland's drug crisis. Carmen, you're up first.
I definitely believe that we need to be working very closely with our law enforcement and all of our law enforcement partners outside of our jurisdiction. We need to be having a standard that is understood by everyone, and that there is a strategy for everyone as well. As mayor, I would definitely also work to make sure that we are communicating regularly with the public so that they are understanding every step of the way what the plan is, what the strategy is, and crime trends as well in the area.
Mingus Maps?
I think it's time for City Hall to stop tolerating the public use of hard drugs on our sidewalks and in our parks. Frankly, as I was coming here today, I saw folks consuming, I believe, fentanyl or some other smoked drug just a few steps away from us. This is a bad policy. I'm glad the legislature moved to recriminalize hard drugs. Frankly, since I've been on council, I've been pushing for that too. When I'm mayor, one of the things I will hold our police bureau accountable for is to enforce that. And I will also partner with our colleagues over at the county to make sure that the option of deflection is real. I believe if we take these steps, we can actually take back our sidewalks.
Back around to you, Rene.
We absolutely have to prioritize the prosecution of fentanyl and meth dealers. It is a humanitarian crisis on the street that is fueled by some really brutal drug trade and cartels. And so that has to be a number one priority in terms of prosecution and the police department. We need to have over 1,000 police officers. Right now we're bouncing around 800. So to really lean in on some of these pieces, we're going to have to continue to grow the police department. We're also going to need some help from the state legislature. Too many drug dealers get out too quickly after arrest, prior to seeing a judge, prior to prosecution. So it's catch and release right now, and it really undermines our ability to disrupt the trade on our streets. I'm not sure deflection's working in Multnomah County. In fact, I think it's failing right now. And as your next mayor, I will instruct Portland Police not to participate in deflection if it does not assure accountability, if it does not assure that there's a revolving door at the deflection center. We've got to have real accountability and cannot just push in the Buckman neighborhood a bunch of folks discharged. So I'm very concerned about the path with deflection right now.
Keith, you're up.
Steve. So I'll cover this in two ways. First of all, yes, I'm glad that we recriminalized because we see the epidemic playing out on our street. We see the tents with the users and we see the tents with the dealers right next to one another. You have to address availability to reduce use. By removing that from our street, it allows and it makes it more difficult for a drug user to find. And then it increases the cost. And then the third item is perception of harm. When you drive down the street and you see fentanyl being consumed, and we show that to our kids, we have to address that because those three things, availability, cost, and perception of harm, drive use. We have to address that and remove that from our street. And then the second part of that, the big issue, a sobering center. When we drive through our community and we see someone suffering, incapacitated, and we don't have the resources of a sobering center to be able to care for that person, to use a Portland Street response to transport them to a sobering center so that person can be brought back without being harmed or overdose or die. And then they have an opportunity to reflect and then help themselves move to a different, excuse me.
I'm sorry to wrap you up. My apologies for that. Liv, you are up next.
Yeah, thank you. I was really proud of Portland voters for passing Measure 110. I thought it was great in its inception. Two reasons it failed. We didn't connect addicts with services on the back end, and then fentanyl flooded the scene. So it was wonderful in its inception, but we didn't follow through with the services we had promised. So that was our failure, the city and the county's failure, and we failed those people. I mean, it's really hard to keep an addict accountable. They're the hardest workers in town trying to maintain those addictions. And it's not fair for our small businesses and for our children to see that constantly. I think sobering centers, connecting these people with services, Ground Score Association downtown, they connect addicts with work, $25 an hour for 4 hours. They work and they can move through their services as they become more sober. But for 4 hours, they can be clean from fentanyl. There's models that are working. There's people doing the Lord's work down on the streets of Old Town, connecting our addicts with services, and it's hopeful.
Follow up, 30 seconds.
Very quick. Just regarding Measure 110, very well-intended policy that in its implementation did not work. And I did support the changes that were made at the legislature, but it's all about the implementation, and deflection and the sobering center are going to be key in if this policy works or not. But we cannot throw it out again. It's only been a few months in. It's too soon to tell that it's not working. So we need to be watching that implementation closely.
Okay, this will be our final question, and you'll have 45 seconds each to answer this question. So a little bit shorter. Data shows that violent crime is down in Portland. Even so, I can tell you from doing our city in crisis stories on a weekly basis that many Portlanders do not feel safe out there. As mayor, what will you do to improve public safety in a way that people will actually notice? And Mingus, let's begin with you.
Well, thank you. My plan is to hire 100 police officers within our first year in office. I believe I can do that. I will tell you why. When I first came to City Council, we were losing police officers in droves, and we were having trouble hiring them. When I got onto council, I created a new culture in this city. I recognize that we have to hold our police accountable. This is something particularly important to me as an African American and the son of 2 brown boys. At the same time, when you need a police officer and you pick up that phone, you sure want one to show up. I want that for my family, and I want that for your family too. So when I'm your mayor, that's going to be my North Star, and I believe I have the tools and the resources to get that done.
Renee, you have 45 seconds for that one.
We need to be over 1,000 police officers. That needs to be a #1 priority for the next mayor. I'd like to bring back Neighborhood Watch and Business Watch. These have been very successful programs in the past in allowing citizens at the neighborhood level to directly impact negative activities in their community and to partner with law enforcement. Also, we also have to talk about economic opportunity in the city of Portland. People have a job and they have hope. It's a very positive, it has very positive impacts in terms of crime.
Keith Wilson?
We have to reduce the burden on our overloaded public safety officials. They're overwhelmed. 10 years ago, a police officer would show up in a priority 1 call in 6 minutes. Today, it's 24 minutes. How do we change that rapidly? So if we look at who are our police officers arresting, 50% of all arrests are of the unsheltered. If we're able to provide basic nighttime shelter and do it quickly, we can rapidly reduce that arrest rate on those officers, allowing people and our officers to get back to community policing, and then restaffing our property crime division, which Chief Day just closed 3 weeks ago. We have a 5% arrest rate for property crime, the worst in the nation. We're on shoulder to shoulder with Oakland and St. Louis. Who would ever thought that that would be imaginable in Portland?
Liv Østhus, 45 seconds.
Thank you. I have a completely different vision of this. Portland is more than its darkness. It's more than its crime. I want our leader to really reflect the great parts of Portland, the positive parts of Portland, tell that story. Yes, we have amazing people working in public safety, but I want the mayor to really shine a light on what's good. One of my ideas is connect our downtown and our public transit with arts and artists to make those very inspiring and attractive. The more density we have on public transit and downtown, the more people will feel safe, and that will attract even more people. Let's re-envision what is great about our community and reflect that. That's my idea.
Improving public safety. Carmen, you're next.
As you mentioned, crime is trending downward, but the reality is people still don't feel safe. So we have to address that gap. And for me, it starts absolutely with having the right responders in the right role, and how we approach public safety should be much more comprehensive. And it starts with bringing back community policing and how we engage with community and how our officers engage with community. Studies show when people feel connected and officers feel connected to the community, activation and well-being and safety goes up. We also need to make sure that we are hiring enough officers for the size of the city that we've become. And we know that Chief Day has a plan for that. We also need to make sure that we stand up Portland Street Response to be fully funded and to serve all 4 corners of the city 24 hours a day. And then finally get those 911 response calls down so that people on their worst days of their lives have access to the help that they need.
It is time now for your closing statements. And Liv, you won the drawing earlier before the program to start first. You have 1 minute. So
okay, thank you so much. So Can I look at you?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, so try imagining a place where it's always safe and warm. You might have that, but many Portlanders do not. And the whole point of society is to care for our most vulnerable, to provide shelter from the storm. That same care then is extended to us when we are in our most vulnerable time. So there are systems in place that are separating us from each other and from the environment, and we are running out of time to heal those divides. My campaign is the only one here that centers the environment first, because without the earth, we are all homeless. Second is the arts, for it is a vehicle of hope and a reminder that beauty is essential and that truth is the only anchor that will steady us in the rough seas ahead. As mayor, I will summon all of my gifts to bring a more peaceable, more equitable, and more beautiful Portland into being. Thank you.
Carmen Rubio, closing statement.
So I'm running because I love this city, and I also am coming in with open eyes about our strengths and our challenges. And we have a lot of work to do to turn our city around, and we need a mayor to meet the urgency of the moment. And tonight you heard that we all know what the issues are. We all are aligned around the big challenges that we need to meet. So we know the work before us, but talk is cheap. What matters most are outcomes. And the question before us right now is who of all of us can deliver on those outcomes? Who can provide lasting change to Portlander on the issues that we care about most? So when viewers make their decision today about mayor, they need to remember we don't need drama, we don't need any more division, we don't need gimmicks. We need real leadership. We need real progress. And I believe in this city, and when I'm mayor, I know that I will lead with collaboration, hard work, and common sense, and we will turn this city around, get it on track, and back to thriving.
Mingus Maps, you have a minute.
Well, I want to thank you for having us here today. I'm running for mayor because I love the city and I'm deeply concerned about the direction we're heading in, as every parent in this city is. I want to accomplish three things when I'm mayor. I want to make us safer, I want to reduce the number of people on our streets, and I want to bring back our economic vitality. I think we can make our streets safer by hiring 100 cops in the next year. I have the tools and resources and plan to get that done. In terms of reducing the number of people who sleep on our streets, one of the things that I will do is to make sure that our Safe Rest Village system works. That means working with the county to make sure that we have housing vouchers for the folks who currently sleep on the streets. And third, I want to support economic vitality. And in order to do that, one of the things we have to do is make sure our streets and sidewalks are clean and safe. And then after that, we have to lean into Portland's strengths, which is small business. So I want to make sure that we provide small business with access to capital that can come through loans, that can come through grants, and that can come through technical assistance. Now, if we put this together, I believe that we can actually get the city, which has been moving in the wrong direction, in the right direction again.
Rene Gonzalez, 1 minute.
First of all, I just want to thank KTU and Willamette University for hosting tonight. I'm a proud Bearcat from both the College of Law and undergrad, so glad to be here tonight. I am a fifth-generation Portlander, father of three, lifelong Democrat, and in my time on council, I've been a change agent. I've been a leader. I've been a standard bearer for safety and livability, confronting our hardest challenges in terms of drugs and homelessness, with a combination of compassion, but also articulating clear expectations. I'll center your future city government on creating a city and restoring a city that is beautiful, healthy, and safe, and welcoming to all. Thanks so much for tuning in tonight.
Keith Wilson.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you to the candidates. I appreciate this conversation. Thanks to K2 for this debate. Let's face it, my opponents had years to build a coalition and deliver results, and they haven't. They've refused to follow the path that other cities have taken that have solved the crucial issues that we now face. They've wasted hundreds of millions of dollars, and as a result, we've lost families, jobs, small businesses, and worst of all, lives. Look, if you like the way the city's being run, then I'm not your guy. But if you want real change, then I'm asking for you to vote for me. My experience is vast and relevant and will meet Portland's moment of crisis. Together, we will repair, restore, and revitalize the city that we all want. The Portland Renaissance that we all want is within our reach. And thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you all. And that does it for this special edition of K2 News. Again, thanks to all the candidates. Can we have a little round of applause for them? It's not easy. And, of course, to our terrific sponsor, Willamette University, thank you for this beautiful building you provided for us tonight to hold this debate. Ballots are officially in the mail. The election is less than 3 weeks away now. If you'd like to watch this again, we have the full debate posted on our website at katu.com. And for a look at all the other candidates, we mentioned there are 19 in total running for mayor right now. You can head to katu.com/know your candidates there. Again, thanks for tuning in. This is important stuff. Thank you all for coming. Good night, everybody.